Discover 3 incredible Egyptian myths, heartwarming tales that transform your perspective forever. Sarah was sorting through a mountain of knickknacks under the bright sun at the Maplewood Community Yard sale. With each item she carefully placed in her box, memories and dreams danced in her mind. As a devoted single mother and teacher, juggling bills and responsibilities, she had long sought a spark of magic in her life. And then, amidst all the discarded toys and forgotten treasures, she found it, a dusty old book, its spine cracked and its pages yellowed, yet the illustrations leaped to life. The colors were vibrant, and the stories of Egyptian mythology spoke of gods and goddesses, love and resilience. Little did she know, this would ignite a flame of hope for both her and her 7-year-old son, Alex. As Sarah flipped through the pages, each tale pulled her in deeper. One moment, she found herself standing in the vast halls of ancient temples, the next, she was flying with a goddess across the desert sky. These stories can restore hope, she whispered to the wind, determination wrapping around her heart. Later that day, she shared the first myth with Alex, sitting on their worn couch after dinner, the soft glow of a single lamp illuminating their faces. She watched as his wide, curious eyes sparkled with dreams. They laughed together and felt transported to a world that became their escape, a balm for their financial struggles. Yet, as Sarah decided to organize a community gathering at the local library to share these myths, her dream began to dim. Whispers of doubt echoed through the town as her neighbors raised questions on relevance, money, and time. How can we care about ancient stories when we worry about putting food on the table? One remarked, frustration etched into every word. She felt as though the breath was knocked out of her, her heart sank into an abyss. On the day of the event, she entered the library, her spirit buoyed by hope, only to be met with an empty room. It felt like a harsh slap against her dreams. As the community veteran, Tom, stood and confronted her, the tension rippled through the air like an electric jolt. Can these stories really give us anything we can use today? He challenged, the weight of his question heavy. The room fell silent, yet alive with palpable awkwardness. Sarah felt the heat rise within her, the stares felt like arrows piercing right through to her soul. Others joined in, voices rose in the air filled with uncertainties about a life connecting to the past, with their struggles shadowing every word. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With her back against the wall, and the invisible walls of doubt closing in on her, Sarah reflected on her journey, the sacrifices, the late nights, the love shaping her life with Alex. As the voices wavered, her own voice trembling, she stood up. It's not just about ancient tales, she declared, a fire igniting in her chest. It's about resilience, about family, about us. Her words hung thick in the air, hoping to bridge the chasm between the past and the uncertain future. She could see Alex watching from the back, eyes filled with hope. Could she really bring her community back together? Could a story truly change lives? As the murmurs rippled out, Sarah felt the weight of the moment, the challenge ahead, and the promise of what might unfold. With resolve, she dared to try once again, hopeful that this story of transformation would resonate not just for her, but for all of Maplewood. And in that tentative step, a new adventure waited to begin. The silence in the library hung heavily, almost suffocating. Sarah's heart raced as she stood before her neighbors, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. She took a deep breath and let the warmth of the stories wash over her, fortifying her resolve. These myths aren't just tales from long ago. They are filled with wisdom, reflection, and dreams that reach beyond their time. She continued, her voice gaining strength. Tom crossed his arms, his brows set in a firm line. All right, prove it, he replied, the challenge daring Sarah to rise to the occasion. She felt a rush of determination. Let me share one with you, she said, a spark igniting in her chest. It's the story of Isis and Osiris. As she spoke, Sarah recalled the tale of love that transcended death, the resilience found in the face of adversity. She described how Isis searched tirelessly for her lost husband, unearthing bits of hope and magic in the darkest of times. The room shifted as she wove words filled with passion and undying devotion. Alex leaned forward in his seat, his eyes wide as she spoke. He absorbed her every word, feeling their energy surge, reflecting the hope that sparked within him. A few faces in the crowd softened. They listened, intrigued, perhaps even reluctant to admit they felt something stirring inside too, yet, Sarah spotted some still shaking their heads, harboring old doubts. What could ancient ruins teach them today? The struggles of this very moment felt insurmountable. And that's just it, she pressed on, making eye contact with Tom, willing him to see. Isis didn't give up. She faced loss, but her love drove her to rebuild, to bring life back where darkness had claimed it. The flutter of whispered conversations filled the air. She could see some of her neighbors' hardened expressions easing, as if they were slowly connecting the dots to their own lives. It's not just a story, it's a reminder, Sarah urged, voice strong, her conviction growing. We all face struggles. We lose things, people, jobs, hope, and yet we find a way to keep going. Isn't that what we need? A little inspiration to link us together. Tom's eyes were softer now, glimmers of understanding emerging. Before he could respond, Sarah felt a gentle nudge from behind. She turned to see Alex, standing now, his little voice ringing out clear and confident. Mom, these stories made me feel like I could fly. Like I can be brave, just like Isis. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah's heart swelled as she glanced at her son. His innocence shone in that moment, a beacon of hope amongst the murmurs. Watching their reactions, Sarah pressed on. If one small story can make us feel stronger, imagine what a whole collection of them can do. We can inspire our community, lift each other up. That glimmer of hope was now blooming in her chest, but would it be enough? As the crowd stirred and began to engage, Sarah felt a new branch of possibility opening. Conversation sparked, shifting the energy. But just as she started to regain her confidence, the sound of footsteps echoed. A figure appeared at the entrance. It was Mia, a longtime friend and fellow teacher, looking flustered, breathless. Sarah! She called out, rushing in. You won't believe what just happened. There's news. We might lose the funding for our school programs. The room fell silent, and Sarah's heart slammed against her chest. The fragile threads of optimism she had worked to weave threatened to unravel. Would their struggles repeat? Was this the end of her effort before it even had a chance to begin? As tension gripped the air, the community stood on the edge of a choice. Would they let despair take hold once more, or could they grasp the strength from the stories they had just begun to embrace? Sarah looked from her son to her neighbors and felt an unshakable resolve. The battle wasn't over yet. Sarah's mind raced, grappling with the sudden shift in the atmosphere. The hopeful chatter that had filled the room moments earlier was replaced by a chilling silence that threatened to pull everyone into despair. She locked eyes with Mia, searching for the reassurance she so desperately needed. Are you sure? Sarah's voice trembled, as fear clawed at her chest. The weight of the news hung heavy, threatening to overshadow the light she had just ignited. Mia nodded, her brow furrowed with concern. I just heard from the district. Budget cuts are worse than we thought. They're stripping away the arts programs, everything we've worked for. Tom's frown deepened, his arms still crossed defiantly. So what's the plan then? Just give up? What can stories do against the cold, hard truth? Sarah could feel the collective anxiety shifting back into the room, an invisible cloud darkening the hope she had kindled. But she remembered Isis. She remembered the unwavering spirit that forged through loss. She wouldn't let her community drown in despair. Tom, she said, her voice steadier now. This is not the end. If we can find the beauty in these stories, we can take a page from them. We can fight back, just like Isis did. We can unite and show that these programs matter. A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd, but doubt lingered in the air like a threatening storm cloud. Sarah felt adrenaline rush through her veins. We have to show them. We can write letters, gather signatures, anything. We must remind them of our worth. As she spoke, Alex squeezed her hand, his small fingers strengthening her resolve. Mom, can the stories help us? He asked earnestly, eyes wide. Yes, Alex. They can. Stories have power. They connect us. Make us realize we're not alone, she said, her heart swelling again with the warmth of possibility. We can create a campaign, use the stories to tell our community's journey, the joy, the struggles, and why art and education means so much to us. We can show them that every child, every program matters. A flicker of hope ignited in Tom's eyes, but skepticism still clung to his body language. And you think they'll listen? If we stand together, they will have to listen, Sarah replied fiercely. We can't just roll over. We have to fight for this, for our children and for each other. Heads nodded, a chorus of agreement slowly building in volume. The energy shifted, walls began to crumble as fear turned to resolve. They started to brainstorm ideas, the tentative hope blossoming into something tangible. They weren't just stories, they were lifelines. Mia stepped forward, excitement lighting her face. We can host a community event, showcase the talents of our students, everything they've learned through these programs. We can reach out to the media, make it impossible for them to ignore us. Yes. Alex shouted, jumping up. We can call it Our Stories Matter. Just like you said, Mom. Sarah's heart soared with pride. Each voice added weight to her mission, propelling them forward like a team ready to take on the world. It was beautiful. They were a tapestry of stories, each thread intertwined with hope and resilience, but just as plans began to solidify, a voice broke through the excitement, a gruff one from the back of the room. And what if we fail? The question hung in the air, laced with doubt. The room fell silent again as everyone pondered the possibility. Would they truly be able to change anything? Would their stories really matter in the face of such overwhelming odds? Sarah took a deep breath, ready to face that fear head-on. What if we do? What if we find a strength we never knew we had? Together, we can make our voices heard, but we won't know unless we try. As murmurs of determination rekindled the energy, Sarah looked around the room, her heart full. This was just the beginning, but it felt monumental. What awaited next was uncertain. Would they rise to the challenge, or would shadows of doubt creep back in? With the weight of their fears and dreams balanced precariously in the air, she knew one thing for certain: they had a fight ahead of them, but they wouldn't fight alone. And in that moment of collective hope, she felt a surge of strength. But was it enough to inspire the rest of the community to join her cause? Sarah grasped that uncertainty fiercely, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The next day, the air buzzed with anticipation. Sarah stood at the center of the community hall, the sun streaming through stained glass windows, painting the walls with vibrant hues. She had spent the night preparing, filling her mind with stories of old, tales that danced on the edges of shadow and light. Around her, faces populated the seats: adults, teens, even a few younger children grasping the hope of a new adventure. They looked to her, their eyes reflecting both doubt and curiosity. The room was alive with whispers, but today, they would focus on the purpose: to unleash the power of storytelling. Thank you all for coming, Sarah began, her voice steady but infused with excitement. We're here to share what art and education mean to us and to fight for their future. Our stories can bridge what is taken from us. She felt a ripple of energy as the crowd leaned in. Mia took the stage next. Today, we'll showcase the extraordinary talents of our students. She gestured to a young girl clutching a violin, her small body vibrating with a mix of nerves and determination. Let's start with Ellie. Before Ellie began to play, Sarah caught a glimpse of the girl's eyes, pools of uncertainty. It was a reminder of her own childhood, standing in front of the class, fearing judgment. She stepped forward, giving Ellie an encouraging nod. "You've got this." A flicker of a smile broke through, and Ellie began to play. The notes filled the hall like a warm embrace, each sound echoing their shared love for arts education. When she finished, laughter and applause erupted, drowning out lingering fears. It reminded Sarah that each story, even one as small as a child's first performance, mattered. After a series of performances, Sarah felt momentum rising. The room transformed from timid silence into an enthusiastic celebration of creativity. She invited others to share their stories about how the arts had changed their lives, starting with families and branching into the community. A father spoke of his daughter discovering her voice through theater. A teenager recounted how painting saved him during difficult times. As the declarations of creativity filled the hall, she caught Tom's gaze. The earlier skepticism in his demeanor had softened. Perhaps, he saw the flame taking hold. "Now," Sarah said, as she wiped a tear of joy, "how do we keep this going? Let us plan the Our Stories Matter event." The crowd erupted into action. Ideas flew, hands shot up to volunteer, and commitments were made. The resonant laughter and hurried brainstorming filled her heart with hope, pushing against doubt like the dawn breaking over a dark night. But then someone else spoke up, cutting through the revelry like a knife. "Do we really think they'll care? They're just going to cut the budget anyway. Why should we even bother?" A hush fell over the crowd, the weight of reality attempting to pull them back into despair. Sarah's heart raced again, but this time it was fueled by something stronger than passion. She leaned into the microphone, her voice fierce and vibrant. "Because this should matter. We matter. If we don't fight for what we believe in, who will?" In that moment, the air shifted, the crowd began to nod, a slow wave of agreement. Hope began to sprout anew, louder than doubt. As they continued planning, Sarah felt an urge to organize a follow-up meeting, to strategize and solidify their approach. But what if the budget cuts were reminiscent of an old story, one that ended in loss? The thought haunted her. Did they have what it took to change the narrative, one that had been written many times before? With emotions swelling, Sarah smiled despite the uncertainty. They had a story to tell now. But would it be enough to sway the hearts of the people who held the purse strings? And as the evening drew to a close, filled with laughter and camaraderie, questions loomed. Could they uncover the strength buried inside their stories, enough to rise against the looming threat of indifference? With the future still unwritten, Sarah felt the weight of the challenge ahead. There would be trials, surprises, and perhaps even betrayals. But she wouldn't face it alone, not anymore. Who else would stand and fight with her? The next morning, sunlight spilled into Sarah's kitchen. The aroma of fresh coffee enveloped her like a comforting hug. She stared out the window, her mind racing with the enormity of what lay ahead. Plans had been hastily sketched, ideas thrown around like confetti at a celebration, but how would they make it real? With her phone buzzing at her side, she felt a jolt of anticipation. It was Mia, eager to finalize details for their first follow-up meeting. "Can you meet at the cafe this afternoon? I think we need to get our heads together and discuss outreach," she wrote. Sarah nodded to herself. Connections were vital now. Their stories had ignited a fire in the community, and it was time to turn that spark into something substantial. As she sipped her coffee, she imagined the empty halls of schools across the district and how those walls would pulse again with creativity and laughter if they could cut through the indifference threatening their precious arts programs. Later, at the cafe, Mia was already seated, scrolling through her notes. The two friends shared a smile, an unspoken understanding between them that they were embarking on a meaningful journey. "I feel like a recent quote I read hits hard right now," Mia said, her eyes bright. "We have to believe that we are greater than the sum of our parts. All of our stories combined will be unstoppable." Sarah felt a wave of reassurance wash over her. They were more than individuals, they were a collective voice. "You're right. It's not just us. It's everyone who believes that arts matter. We need to reach out and encourage people to share their personal stories. Let's create a ripple." They brainstormed, tossing around ideas for social media campaigns, community workshops, and targeted emails to parents and teachers. The enthusiasm swirled around them like vibrant paint splashes on a canvas. As they talked, Sarah felt the weight of her worries start to lift. Suddenly, Mia paused. What if we included the kids in this? I mean, they're the heart of it all. What do they want? Who better to tell us what's important than the ones directly affected? An idea blossomed in Sarah's mind. We could hold a community forum. Invite parents, students, everyone. Let them express what art means to them, share what they'd lose if these programs were cut. Mia beamed. Yes. Imagine the power in their voices, raw, emotional, filled with genuine passion. We could film it too, make it accessible for those who can't attend. This moment of revelation felt electric. Sarah pulled out her notebook and scribbled down their plan, her heart racing with possibilities. They could shape their narrative, draw in the community, push back against the shadows of neglect, but thoughts of the looming budget cuts hung on the edges of her mind. What if the district doesn't listen? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mia placed her hand over Sarah's. They have to listen, Sarah. We have to make them. If we can show them how vital these programs are, how alive art makes our kids feel, we can't let their indifference snuff out that flame. We'll give them no choice but to pay attention. With a reinvigorated sense of purpose, they wrapped up their meeting, excited yet anxious about the road ahead. With every heartwarming story they collected, the impact would grow. As they left the cafe, Sarah caught sight of a flyer pinned to the notice board. It advertised a local arts fair happening the following weekend, a perfect platform for their aspirations. Her heart skipped a beat. Let us showcase our forum there, she exclaimed, but as she glanced around, a nagging doubt crept back in. What if they faced opposition? Would the community truly rally together, or just give in to despair? The challenge was clear, but the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. As they walked into the warm sunlight, Sarah felt the weight of her last question lingering, heavy and unspoken. Were they ready to turn their stories into a force for change? Would they stand united against the reality of indifference? With resolve in her heart, she knew they would fight. But the deeper question remained, could they truly overcome the fear that surrounded them? As the week unfolded, Sarah felt her nerves twisting into knots. The arts fair was just days away, and the weight of their plans grew heavier with each passing hour. Every time she glanced at her phone, a mix of hope and anxiety coursed through her. Would they gather enough stories? What if no one showed up to share their truth? Mia had been a pillar of strength, encouraging her at every turn. We're not alone in this, she reminded Sarah during their late-night brainstorming sessions. Everyone wants to be heard. We just have to give them the chance. But beneath that veneer of confidence, doubts swirled within Sarah. As she drafted flyers and planned social media posts, she couldn't shake the fear that they'd put themselves out there only to be met with silence or worse, negativity. When the day of the arts fair finally arrived, the early morning air buzzed with excitement and anticipation. The community square was vibrant, filled with colorful tents, artists showcasing their work, and families streaming through, laughter mingling with live music in the background. Sarah and Mia set up their booth, a simple table adorned with their banner, Voices for the Arts painted in bright letters. They arranged chairs, hoping that soon they would be filled with eager participants ready to share their stories. Gradually, the crowd began to trickle by, curious glances cast in their direction. Sarah could feel her anxiety heightening. What if this doesn't work? She thought, her heart beating just a little too fast. Mia sensed her restlessness and squeezed her hand. Let us just breathe, this is just the beginning. Remember, it's about connection. Their first few hours were filled with small conversations. Parents spoke about the joy their children found in art classes, while a group of teenagers shyly shared sketches that loosely illustrated their hopes and fears. Then came a turning point. A young girl, no older than 10, approached the booth. Her doe-like eyes were filled with curiosity. "What is this?" she asked, tilting her head to study the banner. "This is a place for people to share how important arts are in their lives," Mia responded gently. The girl's face lit up, and to their surprise, she dashed back to her parents, tugging their hands excitedly. Moments later, she returned, cradling a worn sketchbook against her chest, her confidence shining through. "I want to read my story," she declared, voice steady with determination. The small gathering around them hushed, the excitement palpable. Sarah and Mia exchanged knowing glances, hearts soaring. This moment was the spark they had been yearning for. As the girl spoke, her voice timid but growing stronger, Sarah could see the gathering audience captivated. Her words transformed every listener in that circle, each of them feeling the emotions behind her simple yet powerful story. When she finished, gentle applause erupted, turning into cheers. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. This was why they fought, to give these kids a platform, to remind everyone that art wasn't a luxury but a necessity. It was a lifeline and a voice, a way to illuminate the darkness of indifference. Mia leaned in. "This is just the beginning. Look at them, everyone is stirring. They want to talk, to engage, to share." As more people began to line up, Sarah realized that they had tapped into something far deeper than she had anticipated. It wasn't just about saving programs, it was about creating a community that believed in the transformative power of art. But just as hope swirled around them, harsh laughter echoed from a few feet away. A group of adults in suits, the community leaders that had dismissed their proposal, stood smirking at the booth. The stark contrast of their presence threatened to cut through the warmth that had enveloped the area. Sarah's stomach twisted. What would they say? How would they react to the voices rising around them? Her heart raced. Time stood still as she faced this new challenge head-on, uncertain of the weight of their judgment yet determined to stand her ground. Would their message resonate, or would the shadows of doubt creep back in to smother the light they had created? As a hush fell over the crowd, Sarah locked eyes with Mia. They were ready, but did they have the strength to confront what lay ahead? The tension in the air was thick. Sarah's pulse raced like a drum in her ears. She couldn't ignore the smirks from the group of community leaders. Their sharp suits and dismissive expressions felt like a wall between her and the emerging community spirit. Mia squeezed her hand once more, grounding her momentarily. "Remember why we're here," she whispered, eyes shining with the courage they built together over the past weeks. The crowd buzzed with words of encouragement from the young girl's story. Sarah thought of all the moments that had led her here, the nights spent crafting this vision with Mia, the kind faces of kids hungry to express themselves. She couldn't let this moment slip away into doubt. An older man from the group stepped forward. He was stocky, with a voice that carried authority. "So, this is what you call art?" He gestured dismissively at the enthusiastic gathering around the booth. "A few kids reading stories? Are we really going to pretend that this is meaningful?" His voice was loud enough to send a ripple of discomfort through the crowd. Murmurs of confusion and anger buzzed amongst them, but Sarah saw something else too, a soft spark in the eyes of the onlookers who had come to hear the children's voices. "Art is about connection," she said, her own voice rising above the chatter, steady yet resonating. "It's about reflection, emotion, and sharing. These kids are speaking their truth. Isn't that what we need?" She took a breath, gathering the courage to face the man. "It's not just about how grand it is but how real it can be." The crowd began to nod in agreement, encouraged by her words, their faith in the art sparking hope amid the skepticism. The man scoffed, but Sarah could see uncertainty in his eyes. "Art is subjective." "Perhaps, but that's not the point," he began, but she interrupted him. "Art is universal," she stated boldly, glancing at the girl who had been their catalyst. "You saw her, she had the courage to bare her soul. Isn't that precious? All we want is to create a platform for people to find their voices, to connect with each other, like this." Her words hung in the air, and the crowd shifted, now fueled by their desire to stand up for the young girl and the stories that mattered. They started to whisper support. Before the man could respond, a middle-aged woman in the crowd spoke up, her voice trembling but filled with fierce conviction. My son hasn't spoken a word in a year, but when he draws, I see him come alive. It may not seem like much to you, but it's everything to us. A collective murmur of agreement rippled through as more voices began to rise. Their stories, their struggles, everything came flooding out. The community leaders shifted uncomfortably among themselves, taken aback by the wave of emotion. Sarah's heart swelled as friendships ignited, people sharing their truths in ways they hadn't anticipated, but just as the tide seemed to turn, the man's expression hardened. He raised his hand, trying to silence the crowd. This is just sentimental nonsense. Are we going to reshape our entire community for the sake of a few stories? But Sarah's heart was no longer full of fear. It ignited with determination. Yes. She shouted, surprising even herself. Because stories matter. Every single one matters. If we don't fight for them, we risk losing who we are. The crowd erupted in applause, voices rising in a chorus of solidarity. But the man in the suit remained unmoved, and the threat of confrontation lingered in the air. Sarah faced Mia, a flash of resolve in her eyes. They would not back down. This was their moment. As the cheers died down and the heat of the moment surged through her, Sarah felt an undeniable clarity, a sense that the battle for the arts was just beginning. Yet, beneath the surface, an undercurrent of anxiety rose again, a question hanging in the air. Would this newfound momentum hold? And what would happen if their opponents decided to fight back? The crowd was on fire, but Sarah knew that the real challenges were only just beginning. What would they do if faced with the full weight of the community leaders' disdain? The air was electric, charged with a blend of hope and uncertainty. Sarah's heart beat wildly as the crowd surged with relentless passion, their voices rising like a wave against the stone wall of opposition. She glanced at Mia, whose eyes mirrored her own determination, an unspoken promise that they would face whatever was to come. Together, the older man, his suit stiff as his demeanor, glared at Sarah with a blend of frustration and disbelief. You think this will change anything? He spat, confidence faltering in his voice. These stories are nice, but where's the substance? We've got a community to run, and this is merely fluff. In that moment, fear threatened to creep back into Sarah's mind. But she shook it off, reminding herself of the faces in the crowd, the hopeful children, the supportive parents, the weary adults yearning for connection. They were all counting on her. Look around, Sarah challenged, her voice steady. These stories are not fluff. They're a lifeline. Each one is a thread in the fabric of our community. Take them away, and what do we have left? Just a hollow shell. The crowd erupted in a renewed cheer, their voices a rallying cry, pushing back against the stagnation. And yet, she could feel the tension in the leader's stance harden. This was no longer about art, it was about authority. With a twitch of his jaw, the man shrugged off the applause as if it were only noise, a nuisance he could ignore. You are romanticizing the very thing that could lead our community astray. We can't invest in dreams, we need to build a future with actions that matter. Behind him, several community leaders exchanged worried glances. Were they truly so set in their ways that the power of these stories, the heartfelt connections, didn't register? The thought sent a pang through Sarah's chest, then a voice broke through the crowd, a soft, yet clear sound. A young boy stepped forward, probably around 10. He clutched a handmade art piece tightly, his small fingers trembling. Excuse me, sir, he said. I wrote a story about a dragon that couldn't find his home, and that made me feel brave. Isn't that important? Gasps echoed in the crowd. That one question, so innocent yet powerful, seemed to cut through the hostility like a knife. The leaders shifted nervously, and Sarah's heart swelled with pride for the boy's courage. See? She urged, her voice almost a whisper, brimming with raw emotion. This art, these stories, they help our children dream. They remind us we are more than just our struggles. We are a community built on dreams and connections that unify us. The man's face flushed, caught between indignation and contemplation. The crowd began to murmur louder, their energy building as more stories emerged, each voice a new thread weaving through the tales Sarah had ignited, but just as confidence surged, an icy feeling settled in Sarah's gut. What had started as a celebration of connection was rapidly evolving into a standoff. Behind the facade of his impenetrable suit, was the man actually reconsidering his stance? Or was there something more troubling lurking beneath that hard exterior? As the applause and cheers reached a crescendo, the man squared his shoulders, his eyes hardening as he prepared to retaliate. Sarah sensed the distance growing between them, a divide that might just swell into something insurmountable. Would the passion of the crowd be enough to sway the decision-makers? Or were they about to face the harsh reality of the fight ahead? The moment of truth was fast approaching, and the stakes were higher than ever. Would they be able to turn the tide, or would they find themselves crushed under the weight of resistance? The cheers of the crowd hung thick in the air, almost tangible, but Sarah could feel the tension developing between her and the rigid man in the suit. His cold gaze settled on her as if weighing the worth of her words against the depth of his authority. She took a deep breath, then took a step forward. "Don't you see?" she implored, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the din. "These stories are the glue that holds us together. They show us who we are, what we've overcome, and what we can still dream of. Every child deserves to feel brave, just like that little boy with the dragon." The man opened his mouth, ready to brush her off, but Sarah pressed on. "You need to understand, when I was little, my mother told me stories that transported me far away from our struggles. Those tales became the foundation of my strength. They gave me the hope to push through hard days. Just like that boy's dragon, they can help us all find our way home." The crowd hushed, the weight of her words resonating through the hushed faces around her. A flicker of recognition danced across the older man's features, but he quickly masked it with a curt shake of his head. "You're playing with fire, Sarah," he warned, his voice low and commanding, yet strained. "These fanciful tales, they distract from the hard truths we face every day. Enchantment isn't going to fix our crumbling infrastructure or revive our economy." Her heart sank. Why couldn't he see? These stories weren't distractions, they were the very essence of the human experience. They held the power to inspire change far beyond the immediate needs of roads or buildings. Before she could respond, a ripple surged through the crowd. Someone else was moving forward. It was Mia, her childhood friend, with tears sliding down her cheeks. "But isn't it the dreams that spur us to create those roads and buildings?" she challenged gently. "When people believe, they take action. Stories brew passion, they ignite a fire that drives us to make real change." A murmur of agreement surged, one that echoed through the crowd like a wave of purpose. Sarah could see hope rekindling in the faces surrounding her. "Yes!" shouted a voice from farther back. "We need to believe before we can build." The man took a step back as if the words had struck him physically. He shifted his weight, his rigid form slowly softening, as the crowd pressed their opinion upon him. They were no longer just spectators, they were participants in this moment, reshaping their future with their voices. Sarah held her breath, waiting for a breakthrough. Would he relent, or would he double down, fortified in his beliefs against what now felt like an inevitable tide? "Look, I understand that you want to be practical," Sarah said, searching for a way to connect with him. "But can we be pragmatic without also being visionary? This isn't about fluff, it's about the legacy we leave behind." The man's brow furrowed deeper. Just as Sarah thought she saw a glint of uncertainty in his gaze, shouting erupted from the back of the crowd. "They're trying to silence us. Don't let them." Another voice called out. Panic surged through the ranks as people began to push forward, voices rising in solidarity. Sarah felt the energy shift. The moment could break any second, escalating into chaos, or it could flood the way to a breakthrough. "Wait!" the man roared, raising his hands to command silence. Suddenly, it became clear that he had a choice to make. What would he choose? Would he bend to the will of the people or cling to his power? The atmosphere brimmed with anticipation, and the crowd held their breath. Every heart beat as one, every eye locked on the man in the suit that charged silence. A question loomed large, threatening to change everything. Would he acknowledge the power of the stories that connected them all, or would he remain an impenetrable wall against their unity? The silence stretched out like a taut wire, vibrating with tension and hope. The crowd shifted, anticipation crackling in the air. Sarah's heart raced, pounding in rhythm with the collective breath held by everyone around her. She dared to hope that the community leaders could feel the undeniable energy fueling their shared determination. The older man hesitated, an unmistakable flicker of indecision flashing across his face. Sarah could see it just for a moment. He seemed to weigh the fears of authority against the rising tide of emerging voices, united under the power of storytelling. Then, with a thunderous clap, he slammed his hand against the wooden table in front of him, jolting everyone back to reality. "Fine!" he bellowed, the stubbornness in his tone rattling through the crowd. "Let us say I agree that art matters. What then? You want us to change everything based on feelings and fairy tales? What about budgets, facts, and priorities?" A voice in the crowd called out, "Real priorities involve our kids." A wave of agreement surged, growing stronger, punctuating virtually every sentence that followed. Children shifted, their bright eyes glimmering with enthusiasm as they soaked in their community's strength. Sarah stepped forward, the wind of determination filling her chest. "It starts right here, right now. We come together, share these moments, and remind each other of what is truly valuable. We can combine dreams with action. Art and education can coexist side by side with pragmatic solutions. Isn't that a future worth fighting for?" The applause erupted into a roar, rippling through the crowd as energy swelled. Parents cheered, and children pumped their fists in celebration. All the fear and doubt that once clouded the room was lifting, transforming into something tangible possibility. The man's face softened, and for a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to absorb the voices around him. It was clear that he was evaluating the mounting evidence, the need for storytelling, the fiery passion radiating throughout the crowd that couldn't be ignored. "You mean we work together?" His voice trembled, uncertainty creeping into his tone for the first time. "Yes. Exactly," Mia shouted, her excitement contagious. "Together, we can find solutions that integrate arts into education, while still caring for other essential needs. We can form committees, bridge these gaps, and create programs that involve everyone." The crowd roared again, convinced that this was the turning point. Spirits high, they rallied together, ideas flowing like water streaming from a broken dam. Plans formed, a kaleidoscope of possibilities, workshops for every age, integration of art classes alongside core subjects, community projects that showcased their creativity. Sarah's heart soared. A voice in the back broke through once more, "What about our kids' voices? We want them to share their stories." "Yes," Sarah echoed, determination surging in her veins. "Let them lead. Create a space where they feel empowered to express their views. Every child deserves to be heard." The conversation shifted, plans evolving, fueled by dreams and exuberance. The man began to write notes, and for the first time, Sarah sensed that they were being taken seriously. The community leaders exchanged glances, some shifting in their chairs, others tapping their pens in sync with the budding energy of the room. Moments later, the leader stood tall, his voice softly trembling. "Okay, let us put together a plan. We will gather data, listen to these stories, and find a way to incorporate arts into future proposals. We'll include both your stories and the children's." A lively cheer erupted, engulfing the hall. For the first time, Sarah witnessed the walls that had once separated them begin to crumble. They stood on the precipice of change, every heart resonating with a unified beat, a symphony of dreams and determination coming together. As the meeting wrapped up, the crowd buzzed with excitement, bouncing ideas off one another, creating plans for the future that included every single voice. With arms around one another, Sarah and Mia exchanged proud smiles. They had climbed steep obstacles, faced doubt and uncertainty, and emerged stronger than they ever imagined. In that moment, Alex ran into his mother's embrace. "Mom, I felt it." It was like everyone was flying. His bright smile mirrored the joy in Sarah's heart. "Yes, darling. We all just soared." The warmth of the community surrounded them, and for the first time, Sarah felt it was not only her wish for hope, but the collective dream of a vibrant and connected Maplewood that would thrive for years to come. Tears of joy filled her eyes as they embarked on this journey, hearts intertwining like the stories that had transformed their lives. And then, that pivotal moment returned to Sarah like a mantra, resonating like a heartbeat: "We matter. Our stories matter. This was just the beginning. Now, I need you to take action." Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because it truly makes a difference. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. Let us share this journey together. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to show your support, because only true fans understand the importance of building our community together.